Germany. In his writing and on lecture tours, he championed, but more importantly, embodied, the better side of German culture. His 1947 novel, Dr. Faustus, was a self-consciously major statement, a confrontation with Germany's demonic dark side, and Mann followed it up with a fascinating but also unbearably self-satisfied memoir, The Story of a Novel, The Genesis of Dr. Faustus, 1949. He was a lifelong bourgeois family man who married rich and had 6 children. This was how Mann both presented himself and seemed genuinely to see himself outside the pages of his fiction. That fiction, though, is full of solemnity gently and not so gently mocked, grand personas undercut, psychological turmoil, overpowering emotions and unsavory urges, and artist figures quite pointedly characterized as pasteboard facades, or diseased, or Mephistophelian. His fiction is full not just of his father and the northern German rigidity and discipline he represented to Mann, but of his mother. She was Julia da Silva Bruns, a Brazilian Catholic and native speaker of Portuguese whose father had brought her to Germany when she was 7 years old after her mother's early death. Usually described as being of German and Portuguese descent, in other words, European, Julia was in fact the daughter of an émigré German colonist, a major slaveholder and owner of several coffee and sugarcane plantations, and Maria Luisa da Silva, a Creole, to use the term of the time, in this context a mix of Portuguese, indigenous, and black. Maria Luisa had no previous connections to Germany. She also quite possibly had Marrano, that is, Portuguese Jewish roots. Even Europe is not homogeneous. Julia was raised by an enslaved woman, a Mozambican named Ana. Julia's lifelong nickname, Dodo, is a common Afro-Brazilian term of endearment. Not only that, but according to the Bruns slave registers, Ana had a mixed-race daughter, Luciana, Julia's childhood playmate and possibly, if not indeed likely, Julia's half-sister with the same German father. Whatever the literal truth, the anxiety of cross-racial family relationships is inherent in a 19th-century slave system and was clearly passed directly down to the Mann family. See, for example, Faulkner, William. Thomas Mann knew all this, in more or less detail. Julia was a musician, and in her autobiographical account of her upbringing and education, she credits her Negro education as central to her musical abilities and success. Thomas read the memoir and used details from it in his fiction, but blocked its publication during his lifetime. He would always portray music as primitive emotion coursing through European bourgeois Enlightenment rationality. In her memoir, Julia discusses Ana at great length. In life, she sang Negro songs she had learned from Ana to her children and grandchildren. Perhaps a better translation would be African songs. The German word for Negro has a very different history than the word in America, although it is still fraught and controversial, and translating it as Negro is more misleading than not. In the earliest story in this book, Louisey, where some callow young Germans dress up as hideous Africans to perform African dances in an amateur cabaret, I chose that translation over hideous Negroes and Negro dances, figuring that the questionable racial attitudes would still be clear enough. In 1943, during the key phase of his insistence that he was and would always be, for better and for worse, a German writer, Mann wrote in a letter that he considered Brazil his motherland, considered himself a German writer with Brazilian blood. In a 1930 interview, Mann had said he saw his mother's origins as more central to understanding his own work than all his European literary influences, a claim even more startling when you look at the scholarship on Mann and the proportions of European and non-European influences discussed there. Mann's enemies seem to have known this background too. The Nazis attacked him not only for his internationalism and his Jewishness by association with his Jewish wife, Katya, but for his race. A 1932 article in the